Hi there. This week we're going to talk about proposal development for program evaluation studies. And we're going to continue with a lot of the practical issues that we talked about last week in the design of clinical trials and observational research. There are a number of major steps that are required in the development of a plan for a program evaluation study. First, you need to decide who's going to be involved in the evaluation. Then you need to assess the resources that are available to your evaluation. You need to prioritize the evaluation needs and describe the program that you're going to use or the programs that you will use for your evaluation. You need to define the evaluation questions and develop measures to fit the questions. You need to talk about the research design, and you need to decide whether the resources are sufficient to conduct your study. So let's go through these steps. First, who's going to be involved with the evaluation? Similar to a clinical study, you need to assemble a research team that meets regularly and considers the issues that you will need to address in developing your proposal. And the proposal needs to be broad enough to encompass not only the needs of your research team, but also the needs of the people who you need to support your project. So you need to make a convincing case, for example, in your literature review, that the project is worthwhile doing, the aims are specific, and the methods are sound. So, depending on your situation, you may want to involve at the beginning groups of people who are important stakeholders in this process. These include therapists and clinicians, program administrators and managers, researchers and statisticians, government representatives, and even patients interested in participating. Here are some examples of people you might want to include in the brainstorming phase and the planning operation for a program evaluation study. A scientific researcher who knows about statistics and computers, who can do data analysis and provide advice about the scientific quality of your evaluation plan. You also want to select people who are personable, who might even have a good sense of humor to include in your planning team to make things run more smoothly. You might want to include a government officer, somebody who understands the larger problems facing your region with the design of programs that are in the field, who can give advice on what types of research are needed by government bodies, and who might be in a position to find some funding to support your evaluation studies. You also need people who are very well organized. Another type of person would be an influential person who works in a clinical setting, such as a physician or a program manager, somebody who sees patients regularly, who knows what kinds of problems are faced by people with substance use in your region, and who has a good sense of what kinds of evaluation will work and what kinds of evaluation won't work. The next step is to assess your resources. Resources are generally financial and material. Do you have programs that you could get into with the permission of the program directors in order to conduct an evaluation? Do you have the financial resources, or at least the time that can be allocated in a time-sharing way so that people can collect data? What kinds of expertise do you need? We mentioned the types of people who have technical expertise, like statisticians. Can you afford to hire somebody as a consultant to participate in your project, or get somebody who can volunteer? And finally, time resources, which are extremely important. Even if you're not paying people, you need to borrow the time. And sometimes when you can get the stakeholders around the table, you can negotiate the resources that are going to be needed to get your evaluation done at a low cost. The next step is to identify and prioritize your evaluation needs. For example, managers may be interested in office efficiency, how the flow of clients coming into your program, getting assigned to an appropriate level of care, picking the therapist. All of these things might be important in terms of the process of engaging clients in a treatment program or a detox program. But clinicians may be interested in different issues. They may be interested in the benefits of a new treatment that could be tried out in comparison to the old treatment. Administrators may want to know about the costs, which treatment is most cost effective. Program directors might be interested in client satisfaction, and researchers might want to understand outcomes or the technical details of the treatment process itself. So you need to identify the evaluation needs and prioritize them. Next step is to describe the program you want to evaluate. Every health and social service can be described according to the following types of structure: resources that are organized for a common purpose to manage clients or patients who come into the program, the activities that are planned and undertaken, so what kinds of daily routines do people have, or what goes on during therapy sessions, the immediate outcomes that are to be achieved. Here we're talking about what are the short-term goals of getting people into treatment. And next, you want to look at the long-term outcomes. They may be different. Once you stabilize people and get them through the program, what are the long-term goals that you would expect? And finally, what are the other positive and negative consequences or side effects of your treatment? All of these things get into your description of a program evaluation. An example would be designing a program evaluation for a social detox program. You would want to know what are the resources that go into this program. For example, in this particular program, which is hypothetical, it might be a 10-bed facility with 8 staff and an annual budget of $1,240,000 a year. The program activities might include management of withdrawal, medical screening and referral, brief assessment of a client's drinking or drug use history, motivational interviewing to get them engaged in treatment, counseling, general support to help stabilize the client physically and emotionally, and a variety of other things. So you've got to be prepared to describe these program activities in order to figure out how you're going to evaluate your program. The immediate outcomes might be safe withdrawal from all psychoactive substances and increased motivation for seeking further treatment, which would require a referral to a rehab program or an intensive outpatient program. Longer-term outcomes might be increased participation or engagement in treatment, decreased substance use, improved health and social well-being, decreased use of hospital inpatient facilities, and reduction in hospital costs. And finally, another type of resource that would be described as part of your program would be, or at least another goal, would be reduced unemployment rates that might reflect the benefits of your program without unanticipated side effects. For example, introducing social detox center into a community where people might be opposed. The next step is to define your evaluation questions, and here are some examples. Remember that we talked about the different stakeholders who have different questions? Well, here are some of those questions. How many clients would be experiencing accommodation problems when they come into a program, particularly homeless patients? How many has the number of referrals from probation services increased in the previous year? These are simple questions that you might want to evaluate in your program. Other questions that might arise in terms of client satisfaction would be, how do participants find the types of content in the program? Do they find it useful or useless, beneficial, helpful? You need to design methods that would evaluate these questions. How satisfied are people with the program? Another type of question would be in terms of the program's delivery. How many hours of service were provided to each client? What proportion of the hours involved in direct contact with a client were used compared to the proportion of hours involving contact with others besides the client, like family members or hospitals in negotiating a referral? More examples include questions about program delivery. How many hours of service were provided to each client? Finally, questions about outcome. Did clients who completed the program decrease their substance use? And did pre-treatment counseling increase the proportion of clients who accepted treatment referrals? All of these are legitimate questions that could be discussed by your team as part of the planning process for a program evaluation. The next step would be to decide how you will select your sample. Do you want a sample of convenience, which is the weakest method, which has many sources of bias? Do you want to rely on somebody's recommendations, somebody who has a good reputation knowing the program, to select clients based on their judgment? They may be able to develop a plan to develop typical clients who might be good for a set of interviews. Or would you want a random sample? Each client in a random sample would have an equal chance of being selected. And you would need a randomization procedure to select every 5th or 10th or 15th client who comes into your program. More sampling options include a stratified sample. Do you want to make sure certain subgroups are represented? If, for example, you have clients with a variety of different ethnic backgrounds, and some backgrounds are predominant, other backgrounds are only a few people. You may want to sample equally from different ethnic groups so you can make comparisons across your different types of program clients. Similarly, if you have more males than females, you may want to equalize the number by stratifying according to gender or by type of drug. Another option is choosing a cluster of programs. If you have more than one program, you can't possibly evaluate every one of them, but you may take one or two or three of them and survey just those two. And finally, you sometimes need to do a reading of your population in terms of the actual proportion of males and females, or African Americans and Latinos who are coming into your program. And if you know that proportion, you can select accordingly, in order to get a balanced quota from your different ethnic groups. Continuing with your program planning, you then need to select your research measures. We've talked about the variety of measures that would suit different types of program evaluation. You need to select your outcome measures, develop an analysis plan, and estimate the resources that will be needed to collect, analyze, and report the data, including a budget. All of these things would go into your program evaluation plan, and it would be prepared for the audience that is going to provide authorization and in some cases funding for your proposal. In summary, clinical and health services research, particularly program evaluation, involves a lot of decisions. A diverse research team is important. Get people around the table who are major stakeholders, come up with a plan, develop a written protocol, and then you're on your way.